Snafud is a podcast that contains adult themes and language. Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome to Snafud, where the situation's normal, all fucked up. This is the podcast where we tell you true stories of true crime, true mysteries, and truly fucked up shit that happens every day, and then we just forget about it. I'm Shannon.
And I'm Corey, and we want to welcome you guys to episode 5, and thank you guys for sticking with us.
This week, our stories are going to be a little less chaotic. We're going to veer away from more of the children's stories. Those little psychos are a little too intense for us. But I do want to put a private PSA out there because my original story on kids in the apocalypse was vetoed. So
yeah,
I do want...
I'm not dealing with that sort of shit.
It's just too scary. But I do want people to know, if you ever find yourself in an apocalyptic future and you find yourself coming upon a pack of children, run the other way. They'll kill you all.
Unless
just
you
run.
have a flamethrower.
Extra fried.
Then I think you'll be fine.
So anyways, this week we actually want to give a shout out to another indie Floridian podcasters, Diana and Greg from Podful of Sunshine. They're a fun couple who brings like their weird and real weekly stories. And then they have like this really fun banter that goes back and forth with it. So far, like my favorite story is about the lady who woke up from a party and found out she had a turtle in her hoo-ha and didn't know it.
See, the world is just a wonderful and beautiful place, and they're helping illuminate that on a weekly basis for us.
Yeah, and their humor about this stuff is better than mine, because mine's a little too dark and gritty. But they're fun, so check them out, and one more time, you can find them on everything. I like to listen to them on Spotify, but that's Podful of Sunshine. You can definitely get a good couple of Florida man stories there. Also, this following month, October, it's one of our favorite months of all time, which will basically be celebrating Halloween all month long.
I still can't figure out if we're supposed to watch Nightmare Before Christmas now or save it for Christmas.
I literally start watching it the moment October hits all the way until Christmas night.
Yeah, you're a weirdo.
No, it works out the whole time. I'm not wrong.
I mean, I don't know about that.
But this is the guy who didn't see Elf till this year.
Well, yeah, well, I don't do Christmas movies.
Sometimes you have to trust us. This month right now is all focused on Hocus Pocus. Okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I mean, I lived in New Orleans for a bit. I can do some Halloween like the best of them.
I love it. I wish we could go down there for Voodoo Fest. I wish we could go for Halloween. Really, let's just move down to New Orleans.
Maybe.
The water is just not blue enough for me. That's my only issue.
That's why I got Key West.
Yeah. Let's just go to Key West.
But then we also have Carl.
Yeah, well, he's dead now. So
Maybe.
we can keep his body with... That's what you're saying, right? We can keep him with us?
No.
Oh, never mind.
Not at
Anyhow,
all.
what we are saying is we're celebrating Halloween all month, so all the themes for our stories are going to be the scariest, the spookiest, the creepiest stuff you can find. So it's, Halloween themes. So send us your ideas, your themes, what stories you want to hear, what themes you want to hear. And if we pick yours, we're also going to call you out on air for one of our podcasts and let everyone know that it was your wonderful idea. And we'll also let everybody know on Instagram as well. And you guys can either contact me there or send us an email at our email address, which is just snafud podcast at gmail.com.
I handle
she said assertively
setting up those things. Shannon just runs them. So yeah, snafud with a D podcast at gmail.com.
Okay, Corey, what's the theme this week?
So this week our theme is going to be a little bit different from the other one. Well, not too different. But we are going to be dealing with don't fuck with brick shithouses.
Ooh, mama.
Now, for those of you who,
didn't grow up in the backwoods.
Yeah, like Shannon. So she had to redefine this for me. So
it's called Buttfuck Nowhere.
Yeah.
And you'll never find it.
I know. I'm going to let you define this for all of our lovely listeners because...
Okay, I kept thinking, how do I define this? And the best way I can define it is in the simplest terms of what is a shithouse. Well, typically, most people before the 1900s never had indoor plumbing and therefore would have a shithouse outside. But because those shithouses were portable and you would often have to dig a new hole, which I found all about in my story, it meant that having a brick shithouse was something you did not fuck with. It worked beautifully.
Okay.
It also represents big old ladies that you don't want to fuck with either, because they will fuck you up.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about two of these wonderful ladies today. Luckily, they're all dead, so they can't come track us down, and I would give them the wrong address anyway.
I could not take mine. She would beat me to a pulp.
Yeah, I think both of them. So...
You want to go first or me?
Yeah, I'll go first.
All right. Amaze me.
Welcome, guys, to episode 5, Don't Fuck with a Brick Shithouse. So, my story starts in 1860 in County Antrim, Ireland, with Elizabeth Margaret McNally being born. Now, she's one of 9 siblings, and sometime between the age of 3 and 8, immigrated with her family to the United States, moving to New York. Now, since childhood, Lizzie was a very physically aggressive woman, prone to unpredictable violence. According to her brother, Lizzie was so inclined to quarreling that the family all disowned her for years.
Damn.
And as a result, she wasn't living in any one place. She was traveling herself around.
How fucking shitty are you when people are like, no, man, you're mean. Like, we don't like you.
Well, it's her temper. So she attacked her father and her sister on separate occasions.
Oh.
She's just a very aggressive person. And that kind of sticks with her for the rest of her life. It's just a way she acts. The best qualities of Lizzie, as defined by most people, are that she has translucent Irish skin. She's a
ghost.
Yeah, and then she hit the wrong side of the genetic lottery, she's short, she's got a large nose and a large forehead. People passing by would kind of make comments about her, and her landlord...
Damn, how ugly are you when people pass by and they say stuff about you?
Right? Probably as ugly at that.
You're probably ugly.
Probably very ugly. I mean, her landlord's best compliment to her is that she's just naturally ugly.
Oh my god, that's like when you say someone's naturally pretty, but you're just she's just naturally ugly.
Yeah, there's nothing that she did and nothing she can do. That's just how she grew up.
Oh god.
Even though she was uneducated, her only aspiration was to make money, which, not a bad goal in life. That's kind of my goal, too. And she would try to find a lot of work. However, with her very severe mood swings, she literally scared her employers into firing her more often than not. So here are some of the things that we know about Lizzie that are scaring people. At one point, she takes a knife and throws it at a young man because he was making fun of her.
He deserved it.
Probably. There's another time where she spits in the face of a little girl.
Oh.
Now try to defend that one.
That little girl took her candy. No,
Maybe.
You're not supposed to spit in the face of small children.
No. There's even a time where her baking was insulted by her employer, so Lizzie marched her happy ass down to the courthouse and filed a complaint about assault.
Oh my god.
So on top of being super violent, she's also super crazy.
Lizzie, nobody wants to fuck you, okay?
Yeah. And although...
He said my cooking was bad and then he spanked my ass.
See, yeah, I don't know. But in 1879, Lizzie's 15 at this point, and she marries a man who went by the name of Ketzpool Brown, which, if you can find a better name than Ketzpool, I will name my next cat after them.
Ketzpool.
And surprising enough, this was not a happy marriage. Who could be very happy with Lizzie? She told her family that Ketzpool wanted to murder her, and Ketzpool would tell his family and his doctor that Lizzie had threatened his life. Great couple right here.
I'm gonna say Ketzpool's the one that's not lying.
That's what I was gonna go with. Yeah, I'm gonna side with him. They did manage to have a son, so someone wanted to fuck her. Yeah, and the birth sent Lizzie into a spiral where she started hearing nonstop singing and saw flashing lights, and that doesn't sound like atypical postpartum depression to me. And then
she got them crazy baby blues.
Yeah, she's got something. 3 years after the baby is born, Ketzpool dies from typhoid fever and escaped to probably, being one of the luckiest men in the world right now.
He went to heaven. Good boy.
Yeah, we'll see. So once Ketzpool's dead and gone, Lizzie kind of burns through husbands like I burn through my paychecks. She married a pensioner named Artemis Brewer, who died less than a year later. Then she marries Hiram Parkinson, who left her within the first year of the marriage.
Why?
She married, I don't know, probably because she's insane. That's all I know.
Okay.
She's insane and violent. I'm sure there is definitely a good reason, but I couldn't find it.
She's insane and violent.
Yeah.
That's a good reason.
She marries a war veteran named George Smith, who actually had served with her second husband, Brewer, and she tried to poison Smith with arsenic in his tea, and also ripped up his bed in the street for everyone to see. She's just such a great person.
So, She tried to poison him.
Tried to poison him. He didn't die.
Okay, and she also pulled his bed into the street and like ripped it up.
Yeah, for everyone to see.
She cray.
I don't know.
And then he died, or he left her.
She left him.
Oh.
And she took every portable item in the house. Anything that was not nailed down, she's taking with her.
That's the point. Leave her ass before she takes everything in your house and fucking leaves.
Yeah, this is the first.
Oh my gosh.
First gold digger, I guess. Then on husband number 5 would be her youngest husband. His name is Charles Plaistel, and he's closer to her age, so everyone else was a bit older than her.
He's not like an octogenarian.
No, but he did admit that he killed his previous wife by pounding her to death.
Pounding her?
Yeah, pounding.
Snoo snoo?
It sounds like death by snoo snoo, but I
don't think it's death by snoo
guess
snoo.
It's probably not death by snoo
Oh
snoo.
no.
So Lizzie took her son and ran away to Pennsylvania. This marriage had only lasted 2 weeks.
Bitch knew someone who they were crazier than she was.
Just for the record, we're gonna say that she got married in 1879 and had gone through 5 husbands in less than 10 years. In 1888, Lizzie popped back up in Philadelphia, going by the name of Maggie Hopkins.
Well, when you're Irish, you're just fucking Irish, so you just pick a most random
Irish
nickname you can.
Yeah.
Says Shannon.
Yeah, says Shannon.
Yeah, don't. But we all know it gets worse. It doesn't get better.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better. So
it's cool. I love my heritage, kind of, sort of. I drink with the best of them.
Yeah, but you drink wine.
I know, I put them all, they're all ashamed of me.
You need to start getting potatoes and deciding if you're going to eat them now.
All right, well, some Scotsman needs to come here and influence me into a wonderful drinking habit. I send out a welcome and a competition.
So when she's in Philadelphia, she's living with the family McQuillan. The McQuillan family had actually been the McNally neighbors. And let's just kind of remember, she's crazy, so it's going to get a lot worse than what we're seeing with her marriage. She opens up a shop in Philadelphia, insures it, and then burns it to the ground for the insurance money.
Check, check, and check.
Yeah. The fire also destroyed several surrounding houses in the process.
Extra double check.
She gets arrested.
What the hell? You shouldn't... To set all the houses in the neighborhood on fire is...
To collect the insurance money.
Successfully burned everything to the ground.
Yeah, successfully is... I mean, it got burned.
Glass half full, buddy.
Yeah, but she's arrested and spends 2 years in the Eastern Penitentiary and also in some sort of insane asylum because she's an arsonist now. Adding that to her repertoire. During the time that she was in the penitentiary and the asylum, she loses track of her son, never to see him again.
Probably for the best for him.
Yeah, I'm hoping that he found a great escape and is living a long and happy life for the rest of his life without crazy mama. So Lizzie gets released from penitentiary and moves back to New York State. And while she's in New York, she's looking for work. In Newburgh, New York, she meets Paul Halliday, a 70-year-old widow and farmer. Paul has children who are all grown up and out of the house, except for one of them who never moved on and got married.
So like my dream husband, but here in Boca. Rich, all your kids are out of the house, you'll
super
die
old.
in 15 years.
You can hope even less.
You're real nice to me. Yay!
Yeah. The one son who hadn't moved out was a mentally handicapped child who still lived with him. When Lizzie...
So like an adult handicapped child.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean,
his child.
You're 70. It's his child, so I'm assuming
it'll be his baby forever at 57.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm expecting out of this situation.
Okay.
When Lizzie meets Paul, she told him that she had arrived in America just 6 weeks prior, so she's out there working up that fake Irish accent, working as a housekeeper.
So she's a liar.
Her and Paul here now agree on a salary of $40 a month for her.
It's good ass money at that time.
Yep. And especially for a woman, not to be sexist, but let's be real, it's
or like
the
a
late
house
1800s.
Cleaner.
Yeah, I mean, for a female house cleaner, it's still really good money. At some point during their time working together, Paul marries Lizzie. Neighbors had started spreading rumors that it'd be probably just easier and cheaper to marry her rather than pay her. She eventually becomes Lizzie Halliday, who we all know and are terrified of. So Paul told his sons that Lizzie was prone to short bouts of insanity that would eventually just go away because
that's what it does. It
that's
goes
just
away.
what happens. Yeah. On May 6, 1891, Lizzie burns Paul's house down to the ground because arson is her biggest trick. Paul arrives home to find his house in a pile of ash, and his wife told him that his handicapped son was dead.
What?
She claimed that the boy was trying to save her from the flames, but when investigation of the house was completed, it was stated that the boy's room had actually been locked, and Lizzie was the only one in possession of the keys.
She murdered him.
So
I know this is a story of murder and shit, but like, she locked him in his room.
Yeah, she's doing real well here. So after finding all this out, Paul still stays with her, and on May 26th, Lizzie burns down his barn and his mill.
He didn't get the message.
And then told him that he needs a new one anyway.
Oh, God.
So she is the most basic Boca bitch of all time. She then abandons Paul by eloping with a neighbor and stealing a team of horses, believing that she was going to become a horse thief.
That's the most sane thing Lizzie has done this whole story.
Yeah, I mean, it really is.
Let's go be horse thieves.
Well, it doesn't work out for her. She's quickly apprehended and sent to jail. And at jail, now her new trick is to rip her hair out and start screaming at anyone she saw. The behavior, though, it did get her acquitted on grounds of insanity.
Yeah, that's what she was going
and
for.
And she's sent to a state hospital for the criminally insane as opposed to going to prison. And instead of leaving her there, Paul laughs and said that Lizzie is perfectly sane.
No, she's not.
Yeah. Basically, she had been crazy, but she was fine now, and he wanted her to have immunity from her past crimes.
So, she was crazy. That's why she shouldn't have to do time. She's good now. She should be out now.
Yeah, but she was crazy, so those crimes don't count. Luckily, doctors are smarter than Paul here, and disagree with him, and they keep Lizzie for a year.
Poor dumb Paul.
And then they released her as cured, and she went back into Paul's custody.
Yay, they do such a great job. They cured her of insanity.
In a year, yeah. Paul and Lizzie remained together for another year until Paul disappeared. Lizzie had told all the neighbors that her 70-something-year-old husband had gone off on business. And in 1893, while Lizzie's husband is away, she rides up to a small farm owned by the McQuillans. 74-year-old Tom and his wife Margaret and their 19-year-old daughter Sarah are up there. On August 26th, Lizzie, who was unfamiliar to the McQuillans, introduced herself as Mrs. Smith and said that she was looking to hire a cleaning lady. So the wife, Margaret, agrees to go with her and left the farm to go make some money. A few days later, Mrs. Smith shows up at the farm again in a panic and says that Margaret had fallen from a ladder. And she really had to see her daughter.
Her daughter.
Yeah, Sarah.
Because she fell from a ladder, not her husband or a doctor.
Tom offered to go because he wanted to see his wife, but, Mrs. Smith was insisting that the daughter go with her. Okay. So Sarah got in the wagon and the two women drove away. And it took Tom 2 days of not hearing from his wife or daughter before he decides he needs to find out what happened, who this Mrs. Smith was, and where her farm was, and anything about this job that he let his wife go do. He quickly figured out that he'd been given a fake name and a fake address. Dun, dun, dun. So, while he's realizing that he's got a fake name and an address, Lizzie's neighbors are starting to see some suspicious activity around the house at night.
Because she hasn't already burnt down half the shit in the neighborhood.
Right, she's burned down half the shit. Her husband's gone. She killed his other kid. His other sons were getting a bit suspicious.
Oh.
And suspecting that Lizzie was just lying and that her excuses were just excuses. Paul had been gone for way too long, and they started keeping an eye on Lizzie, and eventually went to the police to get a search warrant. So when the constables arrive at, the house with his officers, they find Lizzie on her hands and knees scrubbing blood from the carpet.
Okay.
The moment they step into the threshold, Lizzie springs to her feet and threatens to kill anyone who enters her house. So
I want to threaten the cops when they come in.
The constable, being the constable, ignores her and walks in.
Women are crazy.
And he gets hit in the head by a board from Lizzie, who's now also screaming about cutting out his heart's blood and just being generally criminally insane.
She's insane, but she kept her promise. She told them.
Yeah, she warned them. So, after taking some time to, probably and hopefully restrain the crazy Lizzie Halliday, they searched the premise and found basically an empty house. So then they're going out and checking out the barn because it's 1890-something and every house has a barn apparently. And they find a lot more than they're expecting here.
What do they find?
So they're finding a huge pile of garbage covered in a giant pile of hay.
Okay.
And then below that, you've got the bodies of Sarah and Margaret. Their feet and hands had been bound and their heads were wrapped in a cloth. They had both been killed by multiple shots to the chest.
So this is 2 weeks in a row where we talked about people just getting covered in the grossest crap ever.
Yeah.
But at least they're dead.
Yeah, at least these ones are dead. So, yeah, I don't know where we find these stories and how we just forget some of this shit happens. So after the bodies had been found, Lizzie said that if anything bad happened, that she had nothing to do with it. Just, yep, there's bodies. Oh, something bad? Nope, if it's bad, it wasn't me. If it's good, then I'm probably okay. But her behavior starts becoming erratic, and she starts picking at her clothes and claiming that potato bugs are crawling all over her. Lizzie's arrested and taken to jail in Birmingham. Paul Halliday still hadn't been located, and his children were desperate to find him. One of his sons decided to break into his father's house with his friend and see if the police had missed anything. And so they do actually find something, because police were probably having another thing to focus on, like the crazy lady hitting them in the head with boards. But the two men search the house and discover that part of the kitchen floorboards were missing or mismatching.
Okay.
And they pry these boards up to find freshly turned up dirt below.
Oh no.
They take a crowbar and thrust it into the ground and find something solid, but soft. And, this scares them, and they abandon their search and run off to go get the police.
Pansies.
Yeah, probably. But if I'm going to go anywhere and I'm going to find something soft, I'm going to get someone else to make it so they know I didn't do it. And they start unburying the house when the police get there and find Paul Halliday underneath his kitchen floor.
He been at home all along.
He had multiple bullet wounds in his chest, and at one point had been struck so hard in the head that his left eye was knocked out of the socket.
I kind of feel bad about how sarcastic I just was.
See, and this is why you don't mess with brick shit houses, because they don't know
they
their
will
own
fuck
strength.
you up. Oh my god. No 70-year-old man deserves that.
No, any man deserves
She probably
that.
just banged him on the back of the head with the board like the police officer.
That's exactly what I'm expecting, and
Pop your eye.
your body. Nope, don't like that visual.
I got you on the wheelhouse now.
Yeah, don't do that to me.
Stop it.
So, in September, in 1893, Lizzie's transferred to another jail in Monticello, New York. While in jail, sightseers had gone to her murder house and literally stripped it to the bones. For keepsakes, because people are crazy.
Dude, there was nothing else to do.
So, at the jail, Lizzie ramps up her craziness and alternates now between shrieking and babbling incoherent monologues, tearing at her clothes, ripping up blankets, refusing food, and when asked questions that she would answer with just some random sentences.
So me on my period.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say that out loud, but yeah, we're not too far from there.
What do you mean by that, Corey?
That you're terrifying.
Okay.
Most of it, obviously we don't have records because there's not video cameras watching these people where she could stare directly at them.
People were watching her.
Yeah. It seems that most of this behavior only happened when people were watching and she was conscious of people watching. Now we've got the famous journalist, Nellie Bly, decides to take the opportunity to interview Lizzie. Bly becomes famous because of her articles on the abuse of mental institutes by the government, by portraying herself as a mad woman and getting placed into a facility for a few days.
Yeah,
So,
I've totally heard about her.
Yeah, she does.
I'm hoping other people have, but if you haven't...
Well, I haven't, but I never took a journalism class in my entire damn life.
Oh, she's amazing. In the time before women could even vote, she became a journalist and would put herself in, live positions of seeing what, life would be like for the people that she was writing about. And so at one point, her editor convinced her to go to a insane asylum, and the way she did this was by wandering around a boarding house for a couple of days until they called the authorities. And then as soon as the authorities came, she acted totally normal, and they were still nope, someone said you were crazy. So they took her to the insane asylum, and her editor got her out within 8 days. Yeah, she's one of the first crazy journalists that would go out and do weird stories.
Yeah. Bly goes from being a patient in an insane asylum and using that for her for her journalism to interviewing people in insane asylums. She tries to speak to Lizzie, who doesn't want to talk about anything but her financial problems, but Bly eventually teases out Lizzie to talk about the murders.
Nobody gives a shit about her financial situation.
I think she's just biding her time to be able to come up with an idea of the story she's going to tell.
Nah, whatever. Shut up, Lizzie. We're all poor.
So what she's got going on in her head is that her husband, herself, and 3 McQuillans, so Tom, Margaret, and Sarah, are all drinking moonshine, eating bread and butter in her house. And at one point, she gets chloroformed by some mysterious figure, who then must have killed Paul and Sarah and Margaret.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
But, it's the 1890s, so you can make up literally any story, and it's so far in the past that story hasn't been come up with. And according to Lizzie, she woke up from being chloroformed, and everyone was dead, and she never realized anything bad had happened. Bly's asking why she never noticed bullet holes or the blood stains, or that something had been buried below the kitchen, and Lizzie simply replied that she didn't know anything. She's just dodging all these questions.
She pleaded that fifth.
Yeah, she's pleading the fifth before I think the fifth was there.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, fifth.
And what Bly's finding here is Lizzie's MO. That she'll say, yes, I saw something bad happen, but it wasn't me, that she didn't do anything.
What do you mean?
Like, when her shop got burned down, she said that someone came in, poured oil lamp all over the floor, and set it on fire with a match. And
it wasn't her.
That it wasn't her, but she saw the whole thing. Lizzie just being either criminally insane or criminally intelligent to make herself seem insane kind of trips up a little bit, and she changes her alibi with Bly a little bit. Taking out the part about her being chloroformed.
Because it's crazy.
And adding that she was actually outside watching all this happen through a window.
Because she knows how movies should be before movies existed.
Right. I mean, no, I didn't get
chloroformed. What a better way to vision this.
I was outside watching from outside.
People get chloroformed.
And it goes from like a mysterious figure who chloroformed her to a gang who came in, killing everybody.
Oh.
And, she was outside the whole time. So one story doesn't make sense, and the other story makes even less sense.
I'm gonna go with the Insane Clown Posse.
Oh, goddamn, please don't bring that into this. Bly is becoming very frustrated with the blatant lies coming out of Lizzie, and accused her of murdering her husband and the 2 women, and called her the most wonderful woman criminal the world had ever known.
What?
Wonderful, I think, at that point, isn't being used.
No, I think we know better now than to try and, illuminate someone and how bad they are by saying nice shit like that, because it just boosts up their ego.
Oh, yeah, easily. But
wonderful. What the hell is... Bly? Come on. There's more
now.
words.
You're better than
Pull
this.
out a thesaurus.
And yeah, this did actually make Lizzie smile. And Bly realized that was a problem now.
She's so dumb.
So Bly goes and asks at point blank to Lizzie, did you murder these people? And Lizzie cuts off the interview at this point. She asks Lizzie if she repents, and Lizzie just kind of gives her another smile and say that God will send you to me. So, still in prison, Lizzie's awaiting trial, and she becomes progressively more violent. She attacks the sheriff's wife, she removes steel shanks from her shoes to use as weapons. She set her jail cell on fire. I don't know how that happens. You're in a fucking prison.
I'm pretty sure if I was determined enough to set something on fire, I can set it on fire.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure no matter what.
I'm willing to bet that with you, yeah, that'll happen. She used a strip of cloth in the bottom of her dress to hang herself in the door of her cell.
So she died?
No. By the time the sheriff found her and cut her down, her eyes were bulging from her head, but she was still breathing. 5 days later, she smashed her cell window and cuts her throat and elbows.
Ugh.
The sheriff finds her sitting on the bed in a pile of blood. She told them that she had done it to see if she would bleed. Just basic questions that any 4-year-old would ask. Because of this, they chain her to an iron ring in the center of her cell floor, so she can't really go anywhere.
Okay.
And Lizzie becomes more erratic because she thought her trial was coming up soon. However, it actually been moved back until the following spring, and no one told her. Womp womp.
I don't think they have to.
Probably not, and probably even less so back then.
But I'm pretty sure had they would have saved themselves a lot of time.
If they told
and
her?
And a lot of crazy.
If they just told her? Yeah, probably.
I don't know.
But who knows? Who knows how she would respond when it got closer. Her trial is on June 18th. Lizzie's lawyer is a man by the name of George H. Carpenter, and he's aiming for the insanity defense because it's the low-hanging fruit.
I mean, who wouldn't just go for that one?
Yeah, it's... I'm trying to, go through my head and find another word.
I mean, she's not going to give you another choice. She's acting totally crazy.
And the prosecution wanted to show that money was her motive for killing the two women. How? I have no idea. It just is what they want to do. During the trial, Tom's sobbing as he identifies his daughter's ring, so jewelry is still there. And if you're going to murder someone for money, you're going to sell as much of that jewelry as you can, in my book.
Yeah, I guess that's totally true.
The defense had no intention of hiding anything. Carpenter admitted that the bullets matched the gun, that the rings belonged to Sarah, and they tried to say that the blood on the carpet was actually Lizzie's because she was not a clean woman who took proper precautions.
Excuse me?
They are saying that all the blood on the floor was just period blood. Yeah, that's not anything I want to think about because...
This is their point. They're like, no, that's not murder blood. That's just... bad lady blood.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Carpenter knew Lizzie wasn't innocent, but he did believe that she couldn't understand right from wrong. His argument was simple. Lizzie Halliday was insane and he could prove it because she had no motive for her crime. Her lawyer brought in an asylum superintendent and 3 doctors who confirmed her insanity. He also brought in a jailer from back when Lizzie had been arrested for trying to be a horse thief, and he testified she was insane then, and she's insane now.
She cray-cray.
She went from arson to horse thief. She's 3 cray.
She has always been crazy.
Yeah, there's just nothing about her is sane and normal. During her trial, multiple physicians came by her cell to examine her. She attacked one of these doctors with the lid of a toilet, because whatever you have laying around. Lizzie never actually said a word in her own defense at her own trial. And as a result, Carpenter persisted to point out that the randomness of the McQuillan murders was proof that she didn't know what she had done. She's just run-of-the-mill crazy.
So, he's trying to say that there was never any connection.
That there's no, premeditated motive for the murders.
She just did it.
And that's what crazy people do.
Well, I agree. I think it's the best he's got.
Yeah. The prosecution urged the jury to consider exterminating the prisoner as an enemy to society.
Damn, they just went, full hardcore ahead with the other way.
And it's because, she can feed herself, she can keep appointments, she can feed her horse, and normally function in society. She just has, random bouts of murder.
Yeah, they're saying she's basically evil.
Yeah, essentially chaotic evil. The jury took only a few hours to come to the conclusion, and they find that Lizzie is sane and guilty of murder in the first degree. So the next day, Lizzie's brought back into court before the judge to have her sentence read out. She showed no signs of comprehension as the judge spoke, and she was sentenced to death by electric chair. It's the first time a woman had ever received this sentence.
Oh shit, that's important then.
Yeah. So she's breaking all the boundaries out there right now. Before, the public had been fairly gung-ho for Lizzie to be found guilty of murder, but once the sentence of execution by electric chair was given and became public notice, they
turned their stories around. They changed their mind. We were all for this until you talked about that evil devil, that electricity.
Yep. Now, you're actually going to do that? Oh, okay.
Oh.
No. The governor of New York at the time, Roswell Pettibone Flower, appointed a commission that would look more closely to see what level of insanity or sanity. But by July, the governor, Roswell Pettibone Flower, had actually agreed and had appointed 3 doctors to evaluate her psyche. They saw that she was severely emaciated, suffering from diabetes and excessive menstrual flow.
So we're sticking with that stuff, huh?
I don't like this theme. So when they get to her, she's also stuffing bits of her dress into her nose and ears.
That's where that goes.
Yeah, that's exactly where it goes. She's claiming that she's numb all over, and she'd allow bugs to crawl on her face without swatting them away. Basically,
if you let a bug crawl on you, you're crazy.
Yeah, because that itches and you want to get rid of it. Doctors are pricking her with knives, and she's not reacting. She's drooling. Her nose runs around. Her nose runs around.
It runs around.
Her nose is running. She cursed at anyone without provocation and kept insisting that there was a river running outside her cell door. All the...
That's a good one.
Smattering of craziness.
That's a good one.
I kind of like that one. The doctors agree that Lizzie was intelligent.
They just told her they gave her a water feature.
And this actually, a lot of this kind of probably backfired on Lizzie because they're agreeing that she's intelligent enough to plan and execute multiple murders, but that she was also unable to resist her impulses. She didn't have the power to choose what her actions would be, and that she was unaware of her violent outbursts. They diagnosed it as conscious impulsive insanity.
Ooh,
and claimed that Lizzie was unable to control everything. Because of these findings, they found her insane. And they moved her from the prison to the state criminal asylum for life.
So she got what she wanted.
Yeah, essentially. Get out of the prison, go to the insane asylum. Once she arrives at the asylum, the superintendent sat Lizzie down and explained that she needed to act as politely as possible if she wanted to be treated well. And Lizzie listened. You know, she became reliable enough to clean herself and do chores, and she stopped cursing at the doctors, mostly. In 1895, Lizzie had convinced herself that she became sane and that she should be sent back to jail.
That is really insane.
You see, that's the insane part of, yeah.
Yeah, you go back to jail, you get to sit in the electric chair.
You get to sit and wait for the electric chair. Yeah. She makes friends with another inmate at the asylum named Jane Shannon, and together they built a grudge against an attendant named Kate Ward. Lizzie convinced Shannon that the staff at the asylum, especially Ward, were conspiring to keep them there instead of where they should be. And the two decided to get revenge, and together snuck up on Ward as she went into the bathroom. Lizzie threw Ward to the floor and stuffed a towel in her mouth. Shannon held Ward down, and Lizzie began to tear out her hair and scratch her face.
Because that's how crazy bitches fight.
Right, yeah, you've all been to the bars and see white bitches fight.
I remember high school, yes I do.
See, yeah, I remember in high school where girls were fighting in the cafeteria, throwing each other through tables. Those are the kind of brick shit houses I went to school with. And in addition to pulling out the hair and tearing at her skin, she just beat the living shit out of her, for lack of a better term. And, by the time the other attendants had found Ward, she's alive, but unconscious. So, after the assault on Ward, Lizzie spent some time in solitary confinement and eventually was brought back up to the main ward. She went 2 years without incident and in 1897 became fixated with the idea that she needed all new teeth.
No.
She complained about toothaches and the asylum brought her to a dentist. Dentist said her teeth are fine.
But she was just convinced, I need all new teeth.
Yeah, somehow, and the thing is, somehow she was able to convince them that she needed the new teeth and that she should get the new teeth.
It's just gross and I don't want to think about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to at all.
No teeth.
Stop talking like that. So, in 1906 is the next time that Lizzie would slip up. There's a 24-year-old attendant named Nellie Wicks, and she was, good at her job. She's promoted all the way to head attendant, and she's still very young. And, at 24, you're not going to be head attendant of anything. At 24, you're still trying to figure out what way's up.
No, she's got her shit together.
Yeah, this one's got her shit together. And, she announces in autumn that she's got some big news and that she's going to be leaving the asylum to become a nurse.
Oh, that's
good for her, right? That's moving on up.
That's why she's so smart.
I don't know how, but apparently Wicks got close to Lizzie because she started breaking down and begs Wicks to stay. And Wicks assured Lizzie that it was going to be okay. And then Lizzie starts to threaten Wicks's life. Reportedly, she had spent days whispering to fellow inmates that she was going to kill Wicks.
Oh.
The general staff and community around her just began to ignore her because, hey, it's that crazy bitch who's killed people in the past and is going to just talk about it.
She just does that.
And, but the thing is, these were kind of, new threats and they're specifically at the facility's head. But Wicks had believed that Lizzie would never hurt her. So,
no.
You're
in a crazy house.
Let's get our guard down against insane people. One morning, as Wicks walks into the bathroom, Lizzie, unnoticed, slips in behind her. Lizzie strikes Wicks in the back of the head, knocking her down.
Toilet bowl.
Probably, I don't know what she hit, but I'm assuming that back piece
she was
of the toilet.
WWEing it.
Yeah, the metal chair.
Sorry, I'm getting nervous, and I'm awkwardly making comments.
So she knocks her on the head, knocks her down, and steals her keys, making sure to lock the bathroom door from the inside. Mm-hmm. And she leaves the key inside the lock.
Sounds right.
Yeah. Lizzie tore the scissors that were attached to the head attendant's belt and stabbed Wicks over 200 times in the face, neck, and heart.
Jesus Christ, that's a lot of times.
She'd been in the room for 15 minutes.
Huh.
So that's really fast stabbing, too. And it'd been over 15 minutes before any other nurses realized that Wicks was missing.
That is not right either.
I mean, if someone's going to go to the bathroom, I'm going to give them the proper amount of time, and then I'm going to realize, maybe it's just a really bad shit. Let's give them a little bit more time.
That poor girl.
And they realized that the door's locked, that Wicks was missing, and so was Lizzie. And they listened to the door, heard thudding and moaning, and chuckling and ranting.
Ugh.
Yeah. And they tried to open the door, found it locked, and the attendant had called Dr. Byrne, an intern, and the doctor tried to open the door with his own key, but couldn't because obviously Lizzie was smart enough to leave the key in the door.
Because she's not really insane, she's just a fucking evil piece of shit.
Evil and crazy, yeah. Which crazy to me is different than insane. But
but she's insane.
Yeah. So the attendants started breaking down the door and failed at doing that because it's a big door. They went through the corridor and then they went through the linen room and had another room that connected to the bathroom. So they, instead of going through the first door, they went around. By the time they reached Wicks, she was unconscious and bleeding heavily.
She's alive.
She was alive for all 200 of these little stabbings.
You said that so nicely.
Because she dies 20 minutes later in a cot down the hall. And she's literally...
She had such a bright future.
Yeah.
That's such a violent death.
And yeah, she's literally the first female law enforcement agent to be killed in the line of duty.
So I'm starting to kind of get the whole we should put her down thing.
Yeah, I'm kind of all right with this one now too. And, they're of course asking Lizzie why she did it. Why'd you just kill Wicks? And the quote here is that, quote, she tried to leave me, unquote. So Lizzie doesn't want change to happen.
She crazy.
And she's just insane.
That's like movie.
Yeah.
Like, worthy. She tried to leave me.
So she lives out the rest of her life in this asylum. She had spent more than half of her life in mental institutes.
Where she more than deserved to belong. Like, that bitch
absolutely.
was setting things on fire. She killed people.
Because she killed everyone that she ever got close to, alienated her family, lost her son, and murdered a bunch of people. No one ever claimed her body after she died, and she's buried in a numbered grave outside the insane asylum. So, that's the story of Lizzie Halliday. What do you got for us, Shannon?
Wow, okay. Well, she was pretty batshit crazy. So here's my story of what most people will know her as Belle Gunness.
Belle Gunness.
Yeah,
I don't know this story.
I know, I've been wanting to tell you all freaking week about it, and I knew you didn't know anything, so I just stayed quiet. Okay. Belle Gunness was originally born Brynhild Paulsdatter Storset.
All right.
Yeah, she's born on November 11th, 1859 in Norway. Storset is more of like the place that she's born in. Doesn't matter. Either way, she's basically a poor farm girl. And even though at this point historians have like laboriously dragged up as much information as they can on her, she's still basically a poor farm girl from the 1800s. So you're going to get like her baptized certificate. But like,
records that far back aren't all that great.
So, what we do know about her is that her family's very poor. They had about an acre of land that they rented out. They couldn't even afford, like, real firewood. So that her job in the family was to go out and collect twigs in order for the family to have a fire.
All right, that's pretty poor.
Yeah, and the neighbors who saw that would then start calling her Snurkvitspala, which just means Paul's twig daughter. It's just a really bitchy way of saying you're poor.
Yeah, sounds it.
At 14, she is hired out as a dairymaid, and what we can see from that is that she's well behaved and she's diligent. So then the main rumor that shadows her past is that everyone says that at 17 she got pregnant. She got pregnant by the local son of a wealthy landowner, and there's two stories that go with it, and both are he didn't want her. Okay?
Oh, okay.
The first one goes, she's over at a local dance, and the man she had made the baby with came in and kicked her in the stomach, and she lost the baby. According to another rumor that's kind of mentioned in the book Hell's Princess by Harold Schechter, the guy that got her pregnant lured her into the woods, and then he beat her so severely that she miscarried. In that very account, they also say that the man would soon die afterwards of intestinal issues because of symptoms that were suspiciously similar to someone who had arsenic poisoning.
She got back on that one, it sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, again, these are just rumors, but when people started asking, like, when she became famous and people start asking the town, like, what do you know of her? This is the stuff that's, like, gotten dredged up.
Yeah.
Either way, beyond the rumor, officially what we do know is that by 24, in 1883, Brynhild would follow her sister to America.
Great, let's bring them all here.
I mean, a lot of people were coming here.
Yeah, because land of opportunity.
So her sister Olena had come to America 7 years earlier, and she changed her name to Nellie, which was a normal thing for most immigrants to do, was just to Americanize their names.
Yeah.
And it was Nellie and her husband that had brought Brynhild to Chicago, and so they paid for her passage over, and then she lived with them, and whatever she made at work, she would pay for her upkeep with them.
Yeah.
When Brynhild moved, she changed her name to Bella Peterson.
Okay.
So she also decided to change her name. Descriptions of Bella, even at this time at 24, when she's young and in her best, they're unkind, but they're very accurate. So she's got a large head with small eyes. She's got a short nose and a wide mouth that's always set in a frown. Like, she literally looks like a frog. Like, she looks like...
That's exactly kind of what I was
like
picturing.
Mrs. Pac-Man. Like, she's about to open up her mouth and be like, mwah, mwah, mwah,
Waka, waka,
and
waka,
then
waka.
take you out. So in order to make her keep with her sister, she was starting to work as a laundress. She worked as a home cleaner, but she was making very little money, and then it was all going to her sister. She had come from a small farm life, but now she's in Chicago.
Yeah,
so
it's
back
a
in the
completely different environment.
Yeah, back in the day, she didn't know what she was missing, but walking around Chicago, she sees the real, like, luxurious items that you can buy in all these stores, and she wants it. So she became incredibly persistent in the idea of getting money, just like Lizzie did.
Yeah.
Except for she admitted that she'd do anything for it, and she also saw marriage as a way to accomplish that goal.
Well, Lizzie got married 5 times, so...
Her sister Nellie is quoted as saying, "My sister was insane on the subject of money. She would do anything to get it." She also said, quote, "She never seemed to care for a man for his own self, only for money of luxury he was able to give her."
Nice things are nice.
Nice things are nice. And that's basically like Boca's philosophy on how to marry anyways.
It's South Florida, it's not just Boca.
On March 1884, she gets married to Mads Ditlev Anton Sorensen, so Mads Sorensen. And he's a night watchman at the Mandel's Brother department store. So, you know, a middle-class job, but a nicer one.
Yeah, graveyard shifts, but...
Hell, I love graveyard shift. So, for most accounts, Bella desperately wants children. She never has any of her own, though. But she always goes out of her way, especially at events, to offer her home to take care of children in need. Basically, she goes, you know, if there's like a church picnic, she's going to be going on stage and announcing, you know, just in case, I'm a good soul who will watch your children. If you're so poor you can't handle it. Makes her look really good.
She eats them, doesn't she?
Well, okay, but another thing that seems to be happening at this time in history is something called baby farming. And it's where people, because there's no birth control and there's no means to, like, limit the amount of children people are having no matter how poor you are, other than not having sex, is, you know, they get rid of their children by basically giving them to an orphanage, or they would give them to women who would be willing to take in their children for a sum of money, either all at once or in payments. And so the deal would either be, here, take care of my child while I pay for it, or the deal would be, here's my kid, find them a new home. Most of the time, these children did not end up in good homes, did not end up in good places. Most of the time, a lot of these kids didn't end up anywhere. They just died.
Oh.
People took in money, and then they disappeared. It was a shitty time.
Right.
But for all accounts, Belle really, really wanted kids and seemed to be in earnest that she wanted to take children in.
Yeah.
And it was such a big deal to her that it actually caused the fight between her and her sister that would make them not talk for years. Belle actually goes to her sister and tells her sister, who has like 5 kids, that she is in love with her 4-year-old daughter. And since the kid already spends so much time with her at her house, like, just give her to her. Like, let her adopt her.
I don't know if that's how kids are supposed to work, but okay.
Her sister also feels that way and just says, no, like, that's my child and that's not how this works.
Yeah.
And after she says that, Bella barely ever speaks to her. So in 1891, Bella manages to adopt a baby girl. The little girl's name is Ginny Olsen. Ginny's mom passed away when she was 8 months old from a fever, and while she was dying, she made her husband promise to give Ginny over to the neighbors because he couldn't take care of two, like, young daughters.
Yeah.
In all accounts, he did give her over to Bella, and he said that she always seemed happy and well-dressed. In 1894, Mads and Bella bought something they would call a small candy store, but it was really more like just a local grocery store, because they would sell tobacco and cigars, newspapers, that kind of groceries, that kind of thing.
Yeah, like a little corner store, Quickie Mart.
But the store did not prosper like Bella thought it would, and in fact, when it started losing money, she got increasingly angrier and angrier. So less than a year after buying the store, it caught fire.
She's been hanging out with Lizzie?
Imagine this. It's only her and Ginny in the store when it happens. And so, according to the newspaper, she goes running out of the store with Ginny after she claims a small kerosene lamp had exploded.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, the insurance investigators could find no trace of glass fragments or any other evidence that a lamp broke. But that didn't matter, because the insurance company paid out to Mads and Bella, and then they quickly turned around, kept the money, and just sold the dilapidated store back to the owner's brother. So they got some money in their pocket now from some insurance fraud, basically. So with all their newfound money, Bella and Mads moved to the suburb of Chicago called Austin. So they bought a 3-story house on Alma Street, and then between 1896 and 1898, they managed to adopt 4 more children. Unfortunately, 2 of them passed away months into their adoption.
That can't be a good sign.
I mean, it kind of hints closer back to that baby farming thing. So, their cause of deaths were considered enterocolitis, which is bowel inflammation, or hydrocephalus, which is water on the brain. So, by now, Mads is working at a railroad station, and he comes across a golden opportunity in 1897.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so he meets a guy who claims that he works for a company called the Yukon Mining and Trading Company. And he says this company claims to own capital stock in New Mexico mines, and that they had interest in Alaska and the Klondike region for mining.
Okay, I was going to say, Yukon and New Mexico didn't add up.
Yeah, see, you're smart enough to have already noticed that part.
Yeah, well, because I know how maps work.
Mm-hmm. He said he wanted to hire miners who were willing to endure a year-long stretch in Alaskan wilderness. So Bella was so excited at the prospect of them getting gold and becoming rich that she pushed Mads into signing a contract on October 27th. He agreed to go to Alaska for a year and prospect for gold starting on April 1st, 1898, and then in return he would be paid and also receive 1/4 interest on all mines that he located, and then along with that he would get 2,800 shares of stock in the company. The company even promised that they would also pay Bella $35 a month out of his paycheck to keep their family going while the main breadwinner would be out of the house.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty great to Bella. In order to sign over this contract, they've also been convinced that they need to invest money to cover Mads' supplies for the 1 year that he's going to be gone. So they hand over a promissory note to this guy for $700, which in like today's money would be more like $20,000. So probably mostly like all their life savings.
Yeah.
The fact is they had to actually put up the deed to their house as collateral.
Oh, jeez.
Just like you called it out in the first damn sentence, it's a scam. Mads shows up to like be at the company and say, hey, it's April 1st. I'm ready to go to Alaska for a year. They're like, yeah, we don't know what you're talking about.
God.
And we're not
Way
really
to
doing
go,
that.
guys.
They ended up having to file a lawsuit and managed to just save their home. But then, in order to make up money, Mads had to return to his job as a night watchman. So, on April 10th, 1900, a fire breaks out at their home. Surprise, surprise.
Yeah, I'm still thinking she's hanging out with Lizzie.
Reportedly, it was caused by a defective heating apparatus. Although firemen arrived really quickly and they saved the house, the Sorensens had lost about $650 worth of property, according to them. But luckily, it was insured. So they got another hefty settlement.
All right. Insurance fraud at its finest.
Dude, at this time, it was the easiest. People, you just get a body. Stuff, you just burn down the house.
Yeah.
Not even. Just a lot of the stuff inside of it. So look. At this time, Mads also had a life insurance policy on him that was worth about $2,000. right?
Okay.
Bella convinces him, like, look, this isn't enough money, like, for a proper funeral or anything like that. Your insurance is about to come up, so I think you need to buy a larger life insurance policy. And he agrees. So he takes out another life insurance policy for $3,000 so that when the first one expires, the second one will just fall into place.
Right.
Well, it just seems that there's one day where the two policies overlap.
Oh,
yes, indeed.
God damn it.
So on July 30th, 1900, that very day, Bella called the doctor to come to her home. The doctor found Mads fully clothed and dead on his bed. According to Bella, Mads had come home suffering a really bad cold and he was complaining of a headache, so she gave him a dose of quinine.
Yep, that's you find that in tonic water. It helps fight. They used to help fight malaria. That's where gin and tonics came from.
Well, it's what she's saying she gave him is quinine powder. And then she went downstairs to make dinner for the kids. And then when she came up later, she found him just dead.
That's why you don't put your arsenic next to the quinine.
Well, the doctor thought perhaps the druggist had given Bella the incorrect prescription, doing just that, right? So he said, hey, can I see the paper that the drug was put in? And she says, no, we threw it away.
Of course, yeah.
Don't
keep that shit around.
Totally gone. And so he's like, well, weird. I don't really got anything to go on other than the symptoms you just told me. Two doctors do his autopsy and they declare him dead of a cerebral hemorrhage. Bella collected both life insurance policies and she got $15,000, which in today's money is like $150,000.
Yeah, she's not doing so bad now.
After Mad's death, Bella placed an ad looking for a farm and then was contacted by the seller of the Altic farm, a large fancy home that at one point had been a bordello run by Matty Altic. It's a 48-acre working farm. And in November 1901, Belle sold her home on Alma Street and moved her and her 3 children, Ginny, Myrtle, and Lucy, to LaPorte, Indiana.
These are some great names.
I love it. So Bella also changed her name too to Belle. Belle went to visit her cousin in Minnesota after Mads died. And then after she made that visit, she made sure to make a point of becoming reacquainted with a very handsome former boarder and newly widowed Peter Gunness, who once stayed with them. He had 2 little girls to raise, and his wife had just passed away. So, after reacquainting himself with Belle, they get married on April 1st, 1902 in LaPorte, and he and his 2 daughters move in with Belle at the farm. This is when she takes the last name Gunness. The farm is no longer the Altic farm, it's the Gunness farm.
Okay.
5 days after their nuptials, Peter's 7-month-old daughter died, and supposedly the little girl died from edema of the lungs, which is just fluid on the lungs.
Yeah.
And so 8 months later, on Tuesday, December 16th at 3 a.m., Jenny, her oldest daughter, was banging on the neighbor's front door with a stove poker, all the way up until the neighbor woke up and Mr. Swan Nicholson and his family came downstairs to see what the hell was wrong with her. And she told them that her mama wanted them to come because her papa had burned himself. They arrive at the house. Swan, his son Albert, and Ginny all get there. And as soon as they come inside the house, they see Belle, but she's sitting in the kitchen and she's just barely coherent. Like, she's a fucking mess. And they go into the parlor and Peter is dressed in his long white nightshirt. Like you always imagine Scrooge.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. And he's face down. Funny hat. Exactly. So that's him, but he's face down in the parlor. And he's laying on his nose, and there's blood on the floor, according to Swan. So he sends his son into town to get the doctor, Dr. Bo Bowell, who's also the county coroner. And when he arrives, he examines Peter, and he determines that Peter's been dead for, like, a long time. Because he's already rigid. Yeah. So Belle is, like, on the edge of hysteria, even though they're trying to question her. And they let her back into the kitchen away from the body. And this is the story she told. She said her husband had gone into the kitchen to get his shoes because he kept them near the stove to stay warm. He stooped to retrieve them, and a meat grinder had tumbled from a shelf above his head, striking the back of his skull and overturning a bowl of hot brine that scalded his neck.
Oh, that's just not a fun way to go.
Despite his injuries, he had assured her that he was all right, and he laid down in the salon to rest. And then a few hours later, she discovered him dead on the parlor floor.
Something here doesn't sound right.
Yeah, this is the best story they're getting out of her. So even Albert kind of commented to his dad on the way home that it sure did look like Mr. Gunness had been murdered, to which his dad told him to shut the hell up and don't cause trouble for the neighbors.
Yeah, we're just gonna not talk about that, son.
Well, that's exactly how it is back then, though. Like, it's very private. Nobody's got, like, a phone or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of know your neighbor, but you just want to stay on good terms with them. And for your kid to just outright be like, look like she killed him, it's like, oh, fuck, don't start trouble. On the day of December 16th, Dr. Belle, assisted by another doctor, did the postmortem on Peter. And they found no evidence of scalding or any burns on the entire body, which she had made a huge deal about, and Peter's nose was lacerated and broken, showing evidence of severe blows, or the result of falling upon a blunt article, such as the edge of a board. More importantly, Peter had a laceration through the scalp and external layer of skull about 1 inch long, and it was just above and to the left of the occipital protuberance, which is just like up and above the eye.
Oh, okay.
So there was a fracture and depression of the inner plate of the skull, which corresponded with the external laceration, which is really saying there's a depression on the inside that coordinates with the cut on the outside.
Okay.
They said an intracranial hemorrhage had occurred, so an interbrain bleed. Belle concluded, quote, death was due to shock and pressure caused by fracture, and said hemorrhage. All right, so seeing this type of damage, Dr. Belle held an inquest Thursday, December 18th, 1902, at the Gunness farm. So Belle undergoes a really deep interrogation where she again explains that after putting her children to bed, she had gone into the kitchen to stuff sausage casings with the freshly butchered pork Peter had ground for her that afternoon.
It's just a great Sunday afternoon thing to do.
Nice and homey. So after completing the task, she had washed the meat grinder and then retired to the parlor where Peter was reading the paper. She said at 11 p.m. she told him it was about time to go to bed, in which he agreed, and he picked up his pipe and then he headed for the kitchen for his shoes. He always locked up the house before he went to bed, and he usually kept his shoes underneath the stove to kind of warm them up before he went upstairs. So she said he went inside the kitchen and then he made some little noise and then a terrible noise. She said she ran into the kitchen where he was getting up from the floor holding his head with both hands. She claimed she had a big bowl of brine on the back of the stove, but it was so hot she couldn't do anything, so she had left it on the stove to cool overnight.
Right.
And she said the grinder she had washed was drying, had been on the shelf above the stove. Then she said when she ran in, he was all wet and covered in brine, and that he said he was burned terribly, and that she told him to take his wet clothes off, and he said his head burned. She had heard baking soda and water was good to put on a burn so it wouldn't blister, so she bathed a towel in that and then she put it on his neck before applying Vaseline and liniment. She's making a really, really, really big deal about these burns.
Yeah, she really is.
Except for, I don't know how many people have seen head wounds, but a head wound bleeds like a mother.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like you're dying when it's barely a cut. So for a major incident, like, she should have been seeing a lot of blood. Yeah. And instead, she's making a really big deal about all this burning. All this burns and how she has to treat it and all these things. Which honestly was like me in high school trying to sneak back into the house. Like, I'd make a really big deal about something so small and stupid that by the, like, third, fourth, fifth sentence in, my parents were like, okay, bye. Yeah. I'm like, okay, bye. They would not give two shits about where I'd been because they didn't want to listen to this stupid nonsense anymore.
You murdered anybody? Great.
This is what she's doing. She's distracting. But she did admit that she saw a wound on the back of his head, but she said it wasn't bleeding. And, well, not very much, at least.
Not any more than it was before.
So she said while she put Vaseline on his neck, he was talking about how he was afraid he was going to lose some of his beautiful golden hair.
Of course he was.
On account of the burning, of course.
Yeah, because that's how you lose hair.
And that he was complaining terribly. She made a note of that. So Belle said that the two of them sat up for a few hours, and finally she said that maybe he better lay down, but he shouldn't go upstairs because of his injury. So she fixed up the lounge for him to sleep on because it was warmer, she claimed. And then she changed him into his nightshirt, and then she went upstairs and she slept with the girls.
Okay.
She said she woke to him calling Mama as loud as he could, and it woke all of the children in the house. So she tried to put on her clothes because it was cold, and she said as she went down the steps, she found him walking around the room saying, quote, "Oh, Mama, Mama, my head. I don't know what is the matter with my head. And she asked what the matter was, and he just kept saying his head. And she said she checked it and told him if he thought it best, she could send for the doctor. And she went upstairs and she woke Jenny to go to the Nicholson's house to rouse a doctor. When she came back down, she saw him holding his head, and he said, "Oh, Mama, I guess I am going to die." And Belle asked him what was paining him so terrible, which is weird.
His head.
And she brought him some water, and he told her not to touch his head. She claimed when Swan and the children showed up at the door, she had been rubbing his head, and that when they came in, they may have thought Peter was dead, but she didn't think so. She thought he was just unconscious. 12-year-old Jenny then was forced to testify, but it was clear by her testimony that her mother had already coached her, and it was exactly everything her mom had just said.
Yeah.
And when they asked her questions even about her prior stepfather, she's like, "I don't know, I'm 12. She just says whatever her mom told her to say. The inquest finished with questioning of Swan Nicholson, the neighbor who had come over, and he stated that he didn't see any burns and he didn't see any blood on the couch where Peter supposedly sat for a few hours. After Peter's funeral, the death was ruled an accident after the meat grinder fell and caused fractures and fatal hemorrhage. Belle would get at least another $3,000 from his life insurance policy.
She knows how to work the system.
8 months later, that's all they've been married.
Yeah.
So, a few months later, Belle managed to add another baby to their household. His name is Philip. Meanwhile, Peter's brother was incredibly suspicious. Not only of Peter's death, but including the babies that died like 5 months after the two had gotten married.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He knew that Peter had taken out a life insurance policy of at least $2,500 doll hairs, and he listed his sole surviving daughter, Swanhild, as the recipient of it.
Yeah.
So he visited Belle, telling her his intention was to make sure that Swanhild got that money.
Of course.
And Belle said, yeah, except for, Peter had actually just switched that policy over to a bunch of stock. So if it ever came to anything, Swanhild would be a very rich little girl, but right now there wasn't anything to it.
Yeah.
And he said, well, that's neat. Let me see the paperwork for that. In which she said she could not do that. She didn't have it. And then she quickly turned around and said, but you, rubbing his arm, 5'8", 250-pound Bella, is going, maybe you could stay here at the farm with us.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. So that shut him up really quick. And less than a week after his arrival, Belle woke up one morning and he and Swanhild were just gone. He took the kid and he left.
That's probably the smartest move that someone's done.
So with Peter dead, Belle turned to running the whole farm on her own. So she's trudging around in men's clothing and she's doing all the farm chores. And she's known around town to be able to toss a 200-pound hog into her wagon all on her own.
Yeah.
She a big lady, and she's not afraid of some hard work. And she terrifies men in general.
Yeah, she's a big lady.
She hauled large bags full of potatoes and other produce to other farms to sell. She made no way of, showing that she wasn't, very
capable.
strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, eventually it must have been too much for her because by February 1904, she starts hiring out for, farm hands. So she hires a man named Olaf Lindboe. He's a Norwegian immigrant, which is, a big thing.
Oh, really? Olaf is Norwegian, huh?
Yeah, no kidding. But this is a big thing for certain groups of immigrants, she's Norwegian, she likes to write in Norwegian newspapers, this is where she puts her ads in.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of people she likes to hire. I mean, obviously her neighbors, Swan Nicholson.
Well, you look at anyone in modern day immigration to America, they meet their people that are family friends or, at least...
similar culture.
Similar culture, yeah, but a lot of them, they know each other when they come over.
Well, in a short time of her hiring them, the neighbors start noticing that their relationship is strangely close. They're always together. So then by 2 months after getting to the farm, Olaf wrote home to his dad to tell him about how beautiful it was there and how he may be getting married soon. Not long after he sent that letter, Belle informed a neighbor that she was in need of a hired hand and that Olaf had left her in the middle of a major job. She told her neighbors that Olaf had left to go see the World's Fair and that other people heard that Olaf had gone to see the new king of Norway be crowned
No, as a king?
Either way, he disappeared and she had reasons. And the weird thing is Olaf's father even wrote to Belle because he hadn't heard from his son for a couple of months.
Yeah.
And she simply wrote him back and just said, look, he went west and took up a homestead someplace. I can't help you. Well, during the second week of April in 1905, a few months after Olaf's disappearance, Henry Gerholt arrived with a large trunk looking to be a hired hand for Belle. So the neighbors saw him in Belle's company often for the next following weeks. And then in August 1905, Belle shows up in another farm and she's asking them for help with harvest time and stacking oats.
She's eating people.
And they're going, what the hell happened to your new guy, Henry? And she's like, well, Henry got sick and he just quit suddenly and I'm out of help. And she said he even left really quickly for Chicago. And all he took with him was a satchel and some clothes, and that the majority of his belongings and his winter coat had been left behind, and he never wrote back for them. So the neighbors actually noted that they saw Belle wearing this fur coat later that winter.
Oh, nice warm fur coat.
Yeah, strange that someone who ran off to Chicago would leave their nice warm fur coat.
Oh yeah, if I'm going to Chicago, I'm taking all my clothes.
So this whole time, Belle's been placing ads for work in the Scandinavian papers, like we said. So now she's decided she has a new plan. It's not about hired hands. She needs a new man.
Yeah, she does.
A real man. She puts out ads in the summer of 1905 in several papers, and it says she's looking for a man who wanted to be with a woman who owned a beautifully located and valuable farm in good condition, who in turn would be a partner in same.
Yeah.
She required cash. Basically, she was very forward and was like, no triflers may apply. Don't write to me unless you have real intention of showing up, and don't show up without cash. And so it's unclear how many people answered her ad, but according to the mail carrier, Belle would receive 1 to 4 letters every single morning, and then usually up to 8 or 10 letters a day.
Jeez.
Yep. According to a local farmhand, Miss Gunness received male visitors all the time. So it's a small community, and they noticed that a widow has a lot of men coming through. And so a different man came nearly every week to stay at the house. She would introduce them as cousins to anybody who asked. This is my cousin Beau, this is my cousin Bill, this is my cousin Idiot. Most of the men who came brought trunks with them, so she was careful to keep the children away from these men, but I don't think that would have been suspicious. I think most men would have expected her to do that.
Yeah.
But none of these men ever stayed very long, and yet no one ever recalled actually seeing their departure from Belle's house or LaPorte.
There's gonna be a castle made of bone in the basement, isn't there?
Every single one of them left their trunk behind. According to a hired hand, there were 15 trunks left behind, and one room of the house was packed with all kinds of men's clothing. So, in summer 1906, Belle hired a Polish immigrant, William Brogiski, to dig a couple holes in the fenced-off hog lot. So she's very specific about her dimensions, and she says it's got to be 6 feet long, 3 feet wide, 4 feet deep. She's telling them it's rubbish pits. So again, This is a running farm. Also back in the day, there's no dump. So you need to get rid of your refuse and all that. So you dig holes and you bury all your crap. So she gets a local guy to dig those for her. And now that it's 1906, Belle's foster daughter, Ginny, is now blossoming into a beautiful 16-year-old, blonde, gorgeous farm girl. There's a picture of her, and she's really, really pretty. And, much like a small town with a beautiful young girl, she's getting a lot of favor from a few men in town. So, by the winter of 1906, Ginny told her friends and another local farmhand, Emil Greening, that her mom had decided to send her to college in California. That morning that Ginny was to leave, Emil had been sent on a chore, but he rushed back quickly, hoping to bid Ginny goodbye. But when he got to the house, Belle told him Ginny had already left. So similarly, Ginny had told another one of her beaux, John Widener, who was a carriage shop worker, that she was going to California, and he said she didn't seem particularly happy about this, and he also made her she made him promise he would come back the following Sunday so he could say goodbye to her. So that Sunday, John had to hire a buggy so that he could ride all the way out to the farm. He said he remembered it was snowing really hard on his way there, so it was a big deal.
Yeah.
But when he rapped on the door, Belle answered answered and told him Ginny had already left. And John told her that was strange because Ginny had told him to come on Sunday. And Belle was like, well, Ginny left on Wednesday. And so...
something doesn't work here.
He said over the next 6 months, he wrote her letters, but Ginny just never wrote him back.
The first ghosted person ever.
In 1907, Emil quit his job as a farmhand and he moved west. Exactly 6 months after Ginny had left as well. Once Ginny was gone, he didn't want to stay on the farm.
Yeah.
So 1 month later, Belle had to hire a new farmhand, and she got a man named Ray Lamphere. Ray is a skinny, wild-eyed local man whose prominent father had drunken his family's money away, as well as all the respect he had ever got. Ray himself was also a drunk, and he was considered a skilled carpenter when he was sober, but he was generally regarded as a weak, worthless, no-account man.
Great.
Yeah, not a lot of people thought too much of Ray. And when you see pictures of him, he just looks like a wild-eyed... crazy guy. Like, yeah. He doesn't look like he's all there. They said that whatever he earned, he spent on liquor, whores, and gambling. By early July, Ray's living on the farm in the room on the second floor that Belle keeps for her hired hands. But he's also in town boasting to his drinking buddies that he's sleeping with Miss Gunness. And it's kind of likely because considering the fact that last couple of farmhands she's had, she got real close to.
Yeah.
In fact, he's boasting so much about sleeping with her that he's like, he's seeing himself as marrying her and becoming a master of this great big farm.
Of course he does.
All of 1907, Belle was seen being really close to Ray. But since the summer of 1906, Belle had been corresponding with a man named Andrew Helgeline, a 49-year-old wheat farmer in South Dakota. She sent him between 75 and 80 letters, written in really sloppy Norwegian. The letters began with describing the sprawling farm, claiming she had 74 acres, which is 50% bigger than she actually had.
Yeah. Well.
And she estimated the value at $12,000 to $14,000. She would then ask to hear about the person that she was writing to, especially Andrew, and she'd ask them up front how much cash they intended to invest in her home. And then this was like her typical letter to whoever was like writing her and trying to be her man, because she wanted to assess a man's monetary worth. She'd beg them that they would have to come to her, that they could tell no one about it until they'd been together. It would be a lot sweeter that way. But they needed to bring at least $500 to $1,000 when they did come. And she typically convinced most of the men who wrote her to do this.
Wow. Well, she's...
I mean, to the point where they're selling their farms before they come visit her.
This is the world before nudes, too.
So Belle's letter from Andrew are all gone, but he must have responded with a goodly sum because she spent the next year and a half trying to convince him to come out to her. She spent the next year and a half trying to convince him to come out to her. She promised a happy home life and hinted at her unabolished adoration. She kept saying he's so amazing. She's in love with him. It will be so wonderful. And she also kind of mentioned, though, don't say anything about coming here. And then the surprise will be so much greater when, your sister finds out. It's just really weird.
Yeah, it really is, but she's trying to get people to sneak around, and that way they don't go, and when they go missing, no one cares.
Right? So signing off on one of her letters, she even finishes with the advice that, sell everything that you can for cash, leave neither money or stock at home, but make himself free of all items and come to her. And so Andrew seemed unique, and he actually kept putting Belle off. Like we said, we got men coming every damn week.
Yeah.
This must have really irritated her. But he kept saying it was one delay or another. And in fact, Belle starts to kind of tell him off even in a letter because she's not used to being put off like this. On January 3rd, 1908, Andrew went to LaPorte to be with Belle. So that same day, Belle kicked her farmhand, Ray Lamphere, out of his room, giving it to Andrew and telling Ray he could sleep in the barn, despite the fact that this is a 13-room house.
Yeah, we can go sleep over in the barn. Don't watch us.
The next day, Ray came into the house, as he did every day, to do his daily chores, and he started to build a fire in the parlor stove to warm the room before breakfast, and as he was finishing, Andrew had come downstairs, so the two of them started a conversation. When Belle arrived and saw the two men talking, she grabbed him, stormed out of the room, and told him, leave Andrew alone. And Ray later complained, we got along all right before that, and she used to come to my room at night, but after he came, she had no use for me. He's got his feelings a little hurt.
Aw, I'm sorry your friend with benefit doesn't want you no more.
Right. On Monday, January 6, 1908, Belle and Andrew go down to the First National Bank of LaPorte together. Andrew presented 3 certificates of deposit and said he would like to redeem them for their full value. The cashier said it would take 4 or 5 days since he would have to send them to the issuing bank for collection, and Andrew was pretty much fine with that, but Belle was pissed. She's demanding that they get some kind of money at least, but they walked away without any kind of money. The reason Belle's pissed is because Belle told him not to do this. She said, sell everything, come with cash, even put it in your underwear.
Yeah.
And he shows up with certificates, and she can't get the cash right away. So a draft of the full amount did arrive on January 11th, but Belle and Andrew didn't come until the 14th. And since the money amount was so large, the cashier got kind of ballsy and was like, what are you going to do with all that money? You know, I could write you a cashier's check. That'd be safer. And Belle demanded the full amount in cash, half in gold, half in coins, and told him to mind his own damn business. So that same day, Belle sent Ray off on an errand to Michigan City, which is about 12 miles away from there. And so Ray was supposed to do a horse trade with her cousin. If her cousin failed to show up, Ray was supposed to stay the night and wait for the cousin until the next morning. And then Ray left around 5 that evening, and he brought a friend along for the company.
All right. Makes sense. I'd bring a friend if I'm going 12 miles by horseback.
Yeah, you're supposed to be out all night. So when the supposed cousin never showed up, Ray went explicitly against Belle's orders and decided to head home. He told his friend something along the lines of, I want to see what the old lady was up to. And so he said he'd meet his friend at a saloon later, but he never showed up. So no one would ever actually see Andrew ever again after that day. In fact, when Andrew didn't come home after about 10 days, his brother became suspicious, and he wrote to Belle asking about Andrew's whereabouts. Belle must have been incredibly displeased that Andrew had gone against her directions in this as well, and telling anyone where he'd gone. So she told his brother that, yeah, Andrew had been there, but he'd only been at her house for like an hour before he left to go search for some brother. She hadn't heard from him since.
That's definitely her MO, though, just... they disappear.
So on February 3rd, Belle and Ray had a huge fight, and either she fired him or he quit. But either way, he storms out of her house without his clothes, without his carpenter's tools. So less than a week later, Belle's got herself a new hired hand named Joseph Maxon. And
I've lost count of how many hired hands she's got. I was trying to keep track, but...
what's important is that Ray's alive.
yeah, he made it out of there in one piece.
Ray consulted a local attorney who counseled him to return to the farm, demand his money and his belongings, and if Belle refused, he was supposed to tell her he was prepared to file a replevin suit, which was an action to recover unlawfully taken personal property.
All right, that's fair.
Yeah, so Ray did that. He returns to the farm, telling her exactly, what he was supposed to tell her. And instead, Belle drove him off her farm. And then she wrote several letters to the county sheriff complaining that she was being harassed by her former handyman. The next month, she spotted Ray skulking around her farm, and she had him arrested for trespassing. So on March 13th, Ray pleaded guilty to the charge and was fined $1 plus court costs.
That's a tiny one back then.
I mean, is it?
I don't know.
It's his first offense. So on March 28th, Belle filed an affidavit alleging that Ray Lamphere was insane. Like, she's not done with him yet. So she claimed that she first noted his insanity in December 1907 when he supposedly was telling her things that were unreasonable and clearly not true.
Yeah.
She claimed that now he came to her house at night, like all throughout different hours, and was looking into her house while he was drunk. But the 3-person panel in charge of the case found Ray was quiet, nervous, clean, and intelligent, and he's sane.
Yeah.
So she's full of shit. So, because she got thwarted on having him declared insane, Belle again has Ray arrested for trespassing in early April. So on April 15th, Ray's found guilty, and he's ordered to pay $5 plus costs, which is a total of $19.01. And then his current employer had to actually pay that amount of money for him. So this is actually starting to hurt him, a lot. And so a week after this, she had him arrested again for trespassing. This time, Belle had her daughter Myrtle claim that Ray had been prowling on their property again when they had spotted him out by the pig pen. She said that he pulled out scissors and he cut the wire fence, and that he pulled out the fence post and carried it away.
I'm not sure you're going to be pulling out a fence post with your bare hands.
This time, however, Ray had a lawyer who was able to call 2 witnesses that testified that at that very time, Ray had been at his employer's home. So, Ray was acquitted and Belle had to pay the court costs. Which
That's fair. Yeah. Made her unhappy, I'm sure.
Made Belle very unhappy. On Monday, April 27th, 1908, Belle's 2 daughters showed up to school crying. This was unusual because the little girls hardly ever got punished by Belle.
Yeah.
I mean, the children actually had a very happy home life, and it was really rare for them to ever be seen getting yelled at or spanked.
I wonder what happened to the oldest one.
She went to college, remember?
Oh, yeah.
So, the teacher was so concerned that she pulled one of them aside and asked Myrtle what, happened. And Myrtle admitted that she and her sister had been playing and they had started down towards the cellar when their mom had caught them. And she gave them a whooping and told them not to go where they weren't wanted.
All right.
And so the teacher asked, were you told that you weren't allowed to go down there? And the little girl said, well, yeah, but we forgot. We just didn't remember.
They were playing.
Yeah. It just was of note because that was unusual for them.
Yeah.
That same day, Belle went into town and she visited her lawyer, who she cried to and explained that she was living in fear of Ray Lamphere and she wanted to make out her last will and testament in case something happened to her. So she left all of her property and belongings to her 3 children, Myrtle, Lucy, and Philip. Yeah, Ginny's not mentioned.
Yeah, I know. We're missing that 4th one, huh?
Yeah, and in the case of the death of any of the listed children, the property would be split among the remaining children, and if none survived, the property would go to the Norwegian Children's Home of Chicago. So she then left her lawyer, went to the store, and she bought the children some candy, cake, a toy train. She told the grocer that she just wanted to buy them a treat. Probably felt bad for tearing into them that morning.
Probably.
Her final errand was to buy a large quantity of groceries, and then she bought 2 gallons of kerosene in a 5-gallon can that she had to borrow from the store because she forgot hers. When she's buying this kerosene, Ray Lamphere actually walks into the store, but neither of them really seems to look at each other, talk to each other, make any note of each other. But then Ray does watch her leave, and when she leaves, he walks out of the store and watches her load all her stuff into her cart, and then she leaves.
Yeah.
So he's being creepy.
Creepy Ray.
In the early morning hours of Tuesday, Maxon, the hired hand that works at Belle's, he woke up choking on smoke.
Oh.
He leaps out of bed and he throws open his window. He pulls on his boots and he starts kicking the door that separates his room from the main part of the house where Belle and the children slept. He's screaming fire at the top of his lungs, but he can hardly breathe. That's how much smoke is already in his room.
And he had a shut door, so that's a fuck ton of smoke outside.
So he pulls on his overalls and he grabs a satchel of his stuff, like his clothes, his belongings, and he races down the rear stairwell of the house. And he threw his things in the carriage shed, which is like a building away from the house.
Yeah.
When he gets back to the house and he tries to get back up to his room, he finds he can only go as far as the 2nd story landing. The fire's too much.
Yeah.
So he tries kicking down the front door. He then goes and gets an axe and he chops out a panel in the door. But at that very time, as he's getting the panel chopped out, he watches the roof collapse over his bedroom.
Oh, jeez.
I mean, this fire is hot, hard.
That's been going on for a while.
It's been
he
going
sleeps
on
through fucking everything, huh?
So at 4 a.m., the neighbor arose for her morning schedule to make her family breakfast. And when she looks out the window, she notices the fire.
Oh, fire. Huh.
So Miss Ella Clifford wakes up her son and kicks his ass out of bed and sends him over to the farm to wake up anyone in case they're not awake.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to realize, at this time, again, there's no phones. There's actually no fire department run by the government. Most of these things are usually, volunteers. So
a bunch of guys with buckets.
Yeah, you rely on your neighbors to save your life. So that's a good reaction. First thing, 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up, see a fire, send your kid out to see if, what can you do? Between Maxon and a number of neighbormen, they did their best to try and get to the 2nd story because they couldn't get into the house. And they didn't see Belle. They didn't see the 3 children. So they were trying to get up to her room, her windows, to see if they could see them, rescue them.
Right.
They weren't hearing anything. And unfortunately, the fire is just too hot and too high. They can't risk going inside.
Yeah.
The blaze actually had burned itself out by daybreak. And by then, from the 13-bedroom home that once stood, there's only 3 walls left of this whole house. I mean, it was a hot fire.
That's some kind of fire.
When the home could finally be searched, the men had a really hard time actually even still going through it. It was like a steaming pile.
Yeah, it's still going to be super hot.
Yeah, they were still putting like water on it, and eventually the firemen used ladders and ropes to pull down the 3 walls just to be secure. It was so rickety, they couldn't risk leaving them up. So there's the 3 walls and there's the cellar. They pull down the 3 walls, and then all they have left to search now is the cellar. Everything has fallen down into this pit. So the men had managed to clear almost all the cellar by mid-afternoon, when at 3:45, William Humphrey was digging in the southeast corner when his shovel hit something soft. I heard that one before.
I've heard this, yeah. I was just going to say that. Don't I just talk about this?
So, in this spot, they found 4 bodies. 3 children, and an adult female body, except for the adult female body had no skull, so they couldn't find the skull.
That's weird.
The bodies were loaded onto boards before being taken to the local funeral home. And that same morning, Ray Lamphere was arrested at his employer's house while he was working. And when the officers arrived, the very first thing out of Ray's mouth was, "Did those 3 children and the woman get out of the building?" So Ray's not fucking helping himself.
Yeah, I know. Come on, Ray.
So when they asked how he knew about the fire, he said he'd seen it at 3 a.m. on his 6-mile walk to work. Back in the day.
Yeah.
And then when they asked why he didn't help or yell or do anything, he stated that he didn't think it was any of his business.
It's not his place. She doesn't want him around.
Yeah, basically is what he's saying, but it doesn't look good.
No, it definitely doesn't.
But again, she's also had him arrested at least 3 times and tried to put him in a crazy house.
Yeah, I can't blame him on not going over to check that out.
After he goes through a really grueling interrogation, and I'm talking about, it's the early 1900s, so when we're talking grueling, they did a real sweating on him. Like, they did not treat him good.
Yeah.
After all that, Ray basically stuck to the majority of his story, but he did state that he didn't say anything about the fire because he was afraid that if he did, he would be blamed for starting it.
Of course.
So this is really the only part of his story that's changing. He finally also admits that he does have an alibi, which he hadn't been willing to tell earlier because he wanted to keep it hidden.
It's a girl, probably.
Yep. He had spent the night with Elizabeth Smith. Elizabeth Smith is a local black woman in her 70s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And she's not known by a very nice name throughout the whole town, which is inappropriate to say in today's day and age.
Yeah.
So that's where old Ray was going, because his 5'8", 300-pound lover kicked him out of bed. He found other options.
I guess so. Yeah, Ray's been scraping some barrels.
And, this is like early 1900s, and he's a white man. He just didn't really want this going on to town. However, the police did go talk to Elizabeth, and she admitted that Ray had come to her house and had asked for a room. He said that he told her he was sick and he had no money, and then he fell asleep in one of her chairs, and eventually when he woke up, he asked her again if he could have a room, which she said she guessed he could. She said he changed her alarm from 4 to 3:30, but he slept through the alarm, and she had to go wake him up like a little bit before 4. So that's her story that way. On May 1st, 3 groups of people arrived in LaPorte because they were interested in the recent fire at the Gunness farm. Belle's sister Nellie and her 2 adult children arrived to contest Belle's newly written will that completely cut them all out and put all this money to some Norwegian children's home.
Yeah.
Ginny's older blood sister, who had kept correspondence with Ginny all the way up until 2 years ago when that suddenly got cut off, and she saw the report in the newspaper about the fire, and also Azel Helgelien, which was Andrew's brother, who was still in search of his missing brother.
Great.
Yeah, he hasn't let this go. So on May 4th, Azel goes to the sheriff. He explains his story about his missing brother, his fear about the relationship with Belle, how he saw the Belle, Gunness farm had burned down. And so after he explains his whole story, the sheriff, Sheriff Smutzer, drives him out to the Gunness farm. So by now, there's not a whole crew of men working on the house. There's not a lot left to clear out from, the fire. So there's only 2 guys digging through some of the rubble.
Yeah.
When Azel shows up, he decides to join in because he's still kind of searching for any clues or signs of his brother. The 2 guys are still there looking for Belle's missing head. Because, again, they had that skeleton but no head. That's the only reason there's two guys, like, still really
That's why I'm
kind of
like, this can't be Belle.
So, Azel ends up spending the night at the neighbors, the Nicholsons. Because he's Norwegian, they're Norwegian, it works out. And so, early the next morning, he shows back up at the farm, and the original diggers are already there. And so, Azel decides to kind of wander around the property, take a look. I mean, he's grasping at threads at this point.
Yeah, but
so he's wandering around, and he sees, like, the lake on the property, but when he goes and talks to the boys about it, they say, yeah, but, you know, it's been frozen over, like, literally all winter, so no bodies would have been put in there, you know, because he's still looking for his brother. So he kind of admits to himself that he is grasping at straws, and he turns around and go leave, and he says goodbye, but as he's heading down to the road, he just gets this weird nagging feeling that he's just, like, he's not doing something right. So he turns around, he heads back up to the men, and he has a strange question. He says, had there been any digging done that spring? And so the farmhand, Maxon, who's one of the diggers there, says, yeah, in fact, there have been. In March, he helped Belle load up trash and cans and shoes and a bunch of other shit over into a pit that had been dug in the fenced-off portion over the barnyard used as a hog lot. It's about 50 feet south of the house. And he had dumped the refuse because Belle told him to. And then he filled in the hole.
Yeah.
So the three of them heads over to where Maxon points out the hole. And they begin digging. Why not? Whatever. Quickly, as they're digging through the dirt, this awful stench comes up. It's not just trash.
No, it's rotten decay.
4 feet down, they found the source of the smell. It's something hard, and it's covered with a gunny sack. So through a tear in the sack, you can actually see a human neck. And in the dirt beside the lack laid a severed arm.
Oh, this is great.
So Maxon drops the shovel, races off to go into town and get the sheriff and the coroner. The body is brought out of the hole, and pieces, the arms... Okay, so... It's not just a body, like, it's pieces of a body.
It's chop bodies.
Yeah, so the arms are detached from the shoulders, the head's detached from the torso, the legs from the knee. The person showed signs of defense wounds across his left wrist. The first joints of every finger on the right hand had been chopped off, but that hand still had a tuft of brown hair in it. So, like, had we had a murderer like that today, like, that right there would have told us exactly who did it.
Yeah.
So, Azel admitted that he recognized his brother's features, even from, like, a very badly decayed face.
Great.
And his search for his brother was over, so his hunch worked.
Yeah.
Maxon shows up again with the sheriff and the coroner, and he points out another rubbish pit just a few feet away from there. And so the sheriff and all of them begin to dig there. So 3 feet down in that pit, they hit trash, and then they hit a jumbled assortment of body parts.
Lovely.
In all, they found 2 men, 1 woman, and 1 female adolescent.
She killed her fucking daughter?
Each were divided into 6 pieces. Most of the bodies were so putrefied that the coroner found it impossible to say whose individual hands belonged to who. And the younger female skull did have a distinguishing feature. A tress of long blonde hair still stuck to the skinless skull. Ginny Olsen had been chopped in half a dozen pieces and dumped into a hog pen trash pit 2 years prior.
It's her
Yeah.
Yeah, no. I don't like this one.
So the sheriff went back to Ray in the jail and told him what they had discovered on the farm. So Ray says, there were things I noticed. I guess they were more serious than I thought.
Great job, Ray.
Good job, Ray.
Bonus points.
He then explains that after Andrew had arrived, Belle had sent Ray to town to buy a container of rough-run rats. Rough-on rats.
Of what?
So it's 10% soot, 90% arsenic. It's rat killer.
Okay.
He also claims another time she sent him into town for chloroform. Ray said a year prior, a man showed up with a black mustache who Belle said was a friend of Ginny's. He'd shown up with a trunk, and even a long while after the man had left, the trunk had remained at the house. Ray had gone through the trunk and saw it still had the man's clothes in it, and he thought that was weird.
Yeah.
Ray also said he thought the skull with the blonde hair had to be Ginny. He claimed he never thought Ginny went to California, and he had never heard of any letters coming from her, and yet he said nothing.
Yeah, he's not helping his case out here.
So by May 6th, there were so many gawkers up at the Gunness farm leading up the driveway that the sheriff couldn't even drive his car up there. He had a hard time getting up there. The number of people that day that would visit the house swelled into the thousands.
Jeez.
So, about 5 feet from the pit that they had dug the day before, they found another pit. A torso covered in a gunny sack, the skull lay nearby, and there were other body parts. And this pit had been a former privy vault, so the smell was worse than the other trash pits. So, there's your shit house.
Yeah.
Another hole was dug.
Oh, god damn it.
Just a few feet further away. And it uncovered more than a dozen pairs of men's shoes with a heap of bones beneath it. And the bodies were being kept splayed out in the carriage shed that day of all the discoveries. This brought the body count in the hog lot up to 9. This is the list of people who were identified. We have Ole Budsberg, who vanished in May 1907. We have Thomas Limbo, who was a hired hand 3 years earlier. We have Henry Gerholt, who had come to wed her a year earlier and brought $1,500 with him. Olaf Svinhurd, and I did it right.
I believe you.
And then John Moe, whose watch Ray was wearing, and Olaf Lindblom, which is clearly, it's not all the bodies either.
Yeah,
remember,
no.
we got a man showing up a week.
Yeah, there's a lot more bodies out there.
We've only been digging for holes. Meanwhile, the female body from the house was measured, and despite not finding a skull, turned out that this body was of a woman who would have only stood at 5'3" and weighed about 150 pounds.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's not gonna be...
This is nowhere close to Belle's formidable 5'8" and well over 200 pounds. And they know this because they would argue somewhere that she weighed between 180 and like 250 pounds because they went and got her measurements down at the local shop.
Now it begs the question, were those her kids, and where the hell is Belle?
Well, they even sent this woman's stomach contents up there because despite the fact that she has no head and everyone's saying that the fire was so hot her head exploded, she still had internal organs.
Can't call that shit bullshit.
So these internal organs were sent off to a lab, and later it was reported that the organs contained a lethal dose of strychnine. So now a heavy rain had actually started over the farm, and that put about 36 hours of digging off. But on May 8th, the rain stopped, and more than 1,000 people showed up at the farm by 8 a.m.
They all want to start digging?
They're not digging, they're just watching.
Of course they are.
Another pit uncovered the remains of a wooden box that was filled with lime, a gunny sack, jelly, and bones, and some dark hair, 2 pairs of women's shoes, and then another body was found as they continued to dig in the hole. So numbers 10 and 11. This whole time, there had been letters still arriving for Belle.
Oh,
from men she had been corresponding with. So although she's gone, dead, disappeared, whatever, sheriff's getting all these letters from men all over the country who are saying, yeah, I do want to come visit you. They're admitting how much money they owe. Like, they're saying, I can sell my farm for this much. One guy's telling her, yeah, I don't have the money, but I'll make a good man. So now they're starting to put the thing together that, like, she's been luring men out here all along.
Just to kill them.
Just to get their money. Although the sheriff is going completely forward with arson against Ray and saying he murdered Belle Gunness and her children with arson, he did now know that Belle had obviously been luring men to her home. Not only were these letters coming in, but so too were a shit ton of letters as the story explodes in the news from people all over the country who have missing loved ones and are just kind of suspicious that maybe Belle Gunness killed them. So he's having to deal with all that nonsense too.
PR nightmare.
During the postmortem on Andrew, his organs had been sealed and sent off to Chicago for testing, and later they would show that he had 1.5 grains of strychnine in his stomach, which was a quantity sufficient enough to kill several people, as well as a considerable amount of arsenic. So this is actually turning out to be Belle's MO. She would lure a man to her home. She would make sure he would bring money with him. If he did not, she already knew she could get money out of the bank, which they would go down to there, like, together. She would start poisoning them, and then she'd murder them and cut them up, and then throw them either in the hog lot, or she threw them away into these pits covered in lime to get rid of her evidence.
Hole, not a pit.
She'd been keeping them all down in the cellar, which is why the kids couldn't come down there.
That makes sense, yeah.
And she had a literal room filled with men's trunks with all their clothing, valuables, and nice shit, including their watches, like Ray was wearing. I mean, she wasn't slick, but back then you didn't have to be.
Yeah, you just had to be quiet and keep your head down.
So, the sheriff chose to employ a local miner named Louis Schultz in order to sluice through debris and eventually what little body parts and bones they were starting to find.
Yeah.
He was initially in search of Belle's dentures, her dentist came forward and claimed, look, I did a denture set on Belle Gunness. If you find those dentures, there's no doubt I can identify them because my name's on them.
Yeah.
And so, of course, this guy is down there and he's going through all this debris. And in doing that, they found 8 timepieces, so watches.
Yeah.
They found several corroded knives. They found parts of a gilded picture frame. They found plain gold rings, some keys, a belt buckle, a few bone fragments, and the remnants of a book on anatomy.
That's a weird thing to have.
On Tuesday, May 19th, he found a pair of dental bridges, upper and lower. The dentist easily identified them and claimed this proved Belle must have been in the fire and that body must have been hers. According to him, in order to remove those dentures, she would have had to extract one of her own teeth, and who in the hell would have done that?
Belle.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, she seems crazy enough.
Okay, so that day, 7 unknown victims were buried in 2 coffins and unmarked graves in a pauper section of LaPorte Cemetery. So the men who had terrible deaths were thrown in trash pits and poo pits, then also got to be piled all together and thrown into an unmarked grave. So that's a great way to show respect for people who are victims of a terrible event. At 4 p.m. May 20th, the coroner filed his report with the clerk of court with a verdict that the body of the female in the basement was Belle Gunness, and that she had come to death through felonious homicide and that the perpetrator was unknown.
Yeah, I still don't think that was her.
Yeah, but fuck it. They're not going to figure it out, so this is the easiest route.
Gross.
On May 22nd, a grand jury returns an indictment against Ray Lamphere, charging him with arson and first-degree murder of Belle Gunness and her 3 children, as well as Andrew Helgeline. On May 29th, the town held an auction of Belle's remaining goods, and 5,000 people are estimated to have shown up. Every item sold.
Of course it did.
Every single piece. A lot of these for 10 times their worth. I mean, one guy actually bought her dog, her cats, her pony cart, and her pony, and then he put them all on
Craigslist.
On show, and people could pay a dime and come see it.
Oh, I want a cat. Atlas.
You have a cat. So on June 17th, the bodies of the 3 children and the woman deemed to be Belle were sent to Chicago, and on the 18th, they were unceremoniously buried. Her sister didn't show up. Nobody showed up. Ray maintained his innocence the whole way through his trial since he had been incarcerated 6 months ago. And so he admitted that though he had led a pretty loose life, he never killed anyone, and he never knew that Belle had killed anyone.
Yeah, he probably wasn't paying that much attention.
I mean, I think he knew he was doing some of her dirty work, but I don't think he's the brightest bulb, and I think he overlooked a lot of things because he had a warm home with a good meal and a big lady to share a bed with. It took 4 days to get a jury that didn't seem to be biased about the story because it'd been in the news so much. Ray's lawyer, Wirt Warden, I said that right, showed evidence that contradicted the identification of the teeth in the bridge work. So they had a fake pair made by a local jeweler who testified that the fold in the bridge work had emerged from the fire almost undamaged, and the fierce heat had melted the gold plating on several watches and items of gold jewelry. So when they found the teeth, it was on a pile of stuff and melted on them. It wasn't in a skull that burned away because it was so hot. Local doctors actually replicated conditions of the fire by attaching similar pieces of dental work to a human jawbone and then placed it in a forge. The real teeth in this test crumbled and disintegrated. The porcelain teeth came out pocked and pitted, and the gold parts were all melted.
Yeah, gold melts really easy.
The artificial evidence was much more damaged than the bridge work being claimed to be Belle's. So a fire said to be hot enough to explode a skull should have completely damaged these teeth way before a skull disappeared.
Yeah.
Joe Maxon, the hired hand of Belle's, and another man testified that day that they had actually seen Schultz, the miner, take the bridge work out of his pocket and plant it just before he supposedly discovered it.
Oh.
The defense also pointed out that all 3 of the children showed results that they all had died from strychnine poisoning and not suffocation or burning. So they'd all been poisoned. They were long dead before that fire ever touched their bodies.
Yeah.
That in fact, all the bodies could somehow show effects of poisoning. Ray Lamphere was found guilty of arson but acquitted of murder, and on November 26, 1908, he's sentenced to 20 years in a state prison in Michigan City, and he dies a year later of tuberculosis on December 30th, 1909. Yeah, so it doesn't matter what sentence you get, you're going to prison and you're gonna die. The only upward point of this that I find interesting is there's a lot of people who feel the way you do, which is that Belle got away.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe that's not her.
Yeah.
And so for the first couple days after the fire, all of a sudden they're starting to look for her. There's sightings of her, people, but it's all rumors.
Yeah.
Nobody actually caught her.
People being people.
And the reality of what was left behind in her will compared with the number of men that were said to have shown up at her farm means that she had a considerable amount of money on her.
Yeah.
So the reality of it is that Belle Gunness not only killed at least 6 children, but she probably killed more than 40 men, and Ray Lamphere took the brunt of all of it.
That's a bit crazy to think about, but I mean...
I almost guarantee that had they done an actual, archaeological dig site of that entire property, they would have found so many bodies.
Oh, yeah,
And
easily.
I think she's a complete moron for just not chopping them up and feeding them straight to the hogs and burning all those clothes. She was so sloppy. What is she doing?
I guess back then, you don't have TV to learn from past criminals.
So the only really cool thing is November 5th, 2007, with permission of Belle's sister's descendants, the headless body of the woman that's supposed to be Belle was actually exhumed by a team of forensic anthropologists and grad students from the University of Indianapolis. And they were hoping to collect DNA. At the time, the only thing they wanted to compare that to was a letter and a stamp that they had randomly found at the house and hoped that it would connect something. But they didn't have enough DNA from all those things to combine to find a connection. Luckily, that's 2007, and we just found a whole bunch of fucking serial killers due to DNA testing.
I was just gonna say, couldn't they take, her,
So very soon, we might be lucky enough, if they found enough DNA and they saved enough of it, hopefully the University of Indianapolis is going to start testing on that, and they will let us know whose body that really belongs to.
Even if it's just you can just do the 23andMe type of thing and see if it's Scandinavian descent, and...
I'm sure that they can find some kind of random relative at this point and figure out who that lady was, and only have to go back to 1908 to find what family member went missing.
That's true.
And we have the woman. I'm not saying we're going to find Belle. I think the only way you would ever find that is if you went from the literal night of the fire to the first train that left LaPorte that morning. All right, guys, well, that's it. I know it's another long one, but I hope it's a sufficient start to our spooky October spectacular. I know it's a little early, but I'm still excited.
Spooktacular?
Spooktacular.
Spooktober?
No, it sounds like Pooptober. I don't like it.
Shocktober.
Let us know how you feel about this. Make sure you send us all the rest of your emails telling us your stories and themes you want to hear in October. And you guys, till then, try and remember all this awful shit so it doesn't happen to you.
So, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.